has adapted to its environment. So, today we're going to be learning about Finneon. Finneon is a water-type Pokemon, and it is only a water-type Pokemon, and it is known as the wing fish Pokemon. The wing fish Pokemon. Now, that name might sound a little bit unusual at first because, fish don't normally have wings, right? So the wing fish Pokemon, a little bit strange. But if you've ever had the chance to watch a Finneon swimming, you'll probably understand that name almost immediately. Now, Finneon, as you can see, is a fairly small Pokemon. It measures at around 40 centimeters, or just about 1 foot and 4 inches, and it weighs approximately 7 kilograms, which is just under 15.5 pounds. It has a slender blue body with a pale underside, large for its size eyes, and two very distinctive sort of tail fins, right? So let's take a nice closer look at its body. Finneon's body, as you can see, is quite streamlined, right? Which makes sense for a Pokemon that spends most of its time swimming. It has to be quite streamlined so it can move around. It is mostly blue in color, and this actually helps Finneon blend with its surroundings a little bit more. And its paler underside creates a soft transition between its body and the lighter water above. And then, of course, we have to look at the large for its size eyes. They're quite noticeable compared to, Finneon's head, I guess. And they give a really gentle appearance, as you can see. But I think the biggest thing that you probably notice when you look at Finneon, right, is these large fins extending from its tail, right? And let me ask you a question. What do you think they resemble? What do you think it looks like if you look just at these tail fins? What do you think? Okay, so if you said that they kind of look like butterfly wings, you're correct. That's sort of what they resemble, right? These large sort of tail fins are definitely Finneon's most distinctive feature, in my opinion, and they're actually what gives Finneon the name of the wing fish Pokemon. When Finneon swims, these fins move in a sort of fluttering motion, and rather than simply pushing itself through the water with a conventional, I guess, fish tail, Finneon will move these fins in a way that makes it look almost as if it's like flying underwater. If you imagine butterfly wings shaking, it's sort of the same, but in the tail and also underwater. And obviously this is not just for show. This actually allows Finneon to move very gracefully through the water and helping it be able to move around and also to change direction as it is swimming in the sea. They're also very powerful, powerful enough to propel Finneon upwards, allowing it to essentially leap out of the water. They can break through the surface of the water and jump out of the water and sort of like, like a little butterfly flying around. And before we continue, you might notice a tiny little difference. If you look at the fins, when you look at male and female Finneon, female Finneon tend to have a slightly larger lower sort of lobe, I guess, on their tail fins, I guess, compared to males. As you see, the little bit at the end is a little bit bigger for females. It's a fairly subtle difference, especially if you're seeing one, swimming far away. But it's always interesting to know these differences between the same species and how they can affect their physical appearance, even if it's a small physical difference. Okay, now you thought we were done with this tail slash fins. We are not actually done with this yet, because they have yet another remarkable feature. Isn't it crazy how many things these wings can do? I'm calling them wings, you can call them fins, call them a tail, whatever you want. But yes, isn't it amazing how many things they can do? Well, do you see these bright pink markings on the fins? Well, they're not just there to make Finneon look beautiful, although it helps, because Finneon looks really nice with them. But they actually have a very useful relationship with sunlight. Yes, with the sunlight, which is okay, what? It's a water Pokemon. What does it have to do with the sunlight? Well, you see, during the day, Finneon will usually remain higher up in the water, so closer to the surface of the water, right? Where it is exposed to a lot of sunlight. So a lot of sunlight is hitting Finneon, sort of like if you want to get a tan as a human, well, Finneon will do the same. But it's not getting a tan, right? Instead, these pink markings on his body are able to absorb that sunlight. And once they've taken up enough sunlight, they are able to shine when it is dark. Yes, so they can shine. How cool is that? They take the sunlight and then at night, or when it's dark or whatever, they are able to shine underwater. That's amazing. So, in a way, basically, Finneon spends most of its day, or part of its day, collecting a lot of sunlight. And then once the sun goes down, they are able to produce their own light. And this is not just for fun, it's actually quite useful for when Finneon is swimming through darker waters. With this glow, Finneon is also able to camouflage itself and its surrounding, and Finneon is even able to attract prey because they're emitting light. Then curious little prey will go towards it and be like, "What is this light?" And then Finneon can, eat essentially. So these beautiful pink markings that make Finneon, so pretty to us, we're like, wow, what a nice Pokemon. They're actually a rather effective survival strategy for the Pokemon itself, right? I think it's a great reminder that in the Pokemon world, something that looks, purely decorative, purely okay, how pretty is this? It usually will have a practical purpose. Pokemon, for the most part, don't have this idea of okay, I gotta look pretty. It's more okay, what can I use in order to survive, in order to increase my chances of survival, However, speaking of Finneon's beauty, right, it's a very pretty Pokemon, and it's a very friendly Pokemon. This has made Finneon a very popular Pokemon. Finneon, they can be found in a lot of different bodies of water, and usually they will travel in schools, right? A school is a lot of Finneon, which basically move together, they're a team, a Finneon, if you want to call it that. That is a school. And the school of Finneon moving together is a really beautiful sight, particularly when their colorful markings are catching light, when they are shining and all that stuff, right? And it's very, very beautiful, and this makes Finneon very popular specifically with people who are diving or people who, even just go to the beach. In fact, they're so popular that a lot of resorts will feed Finneon a lot of food, in order to encourage Finneon to stay nearby so that the guests of the resort can get to see these beautiful fish all day and also all night because they are shining, This makes it so that diving to look for Finneon is quite easy, and it's a really beautiful site that is really accessible for everyone, which just makes it so that people like watching Finneon even more. Now, it's gotten to the point that you can see how beautiful Finneon is, how graceful it is, and the people love the appeal, right? Finneon has semi-recently, I guess, obtained the nickname of the Beautifly of the sea. So if you imagine a Pokemon like Beautifly, right, very pretty butterfly Pokemon, Finneon is known as the Beautifly of the sea. So the Beautifly that is in the water. And honestly, I think it's a really nice comparison because when you look at a school of Finneon, moving through the water with their large fins fluttering behind them, it's easy to understand why some people might look at them and think that they are butterflies, Only that these butterflies are not always going through the air. They're sort of flying through the sea, which I think is fantastic. And if you ever get a chance to look at a school of Finneon, I recommend that you do it because it is a beautiful, beautiful sight. Okay, and now that we've had a good look at Finneon's body and how beautiful it is, let's actually take a look at some of the more practical aspect in the sense of the moves that it can learn and the abilities that it has and all that stuff, right? So we're only going to look at a few, so don't worry. One of its more fitting water type moves is, well, first of all, Water Gun. I feel like most water type Pokemon will learn Water Gun, but Finneon can also learn Water Pulse, which allows Finneon to throw or fire, I guess, a pulse of water at its opponent. You know, fire a pulse is not really fire, but you know what I mean. Fire a pulse of water at its opponent, which will leave them confused. Well, or it can leave them confused, which is quite useful, especially because Finneon is such a small Pokemon. Confusing the other Pokemon might give it a good chance to escape or whatever it needs. Then Finneon can also learn Aqua Ring. Aqua Ring is a really interesting move because it's not an attacking move, right? Finneon will actually surround itself in this sort of ring of water. There's the name Aqua Ring. And what this ring of water does is that it gradually heals Finneon. It restores its health slowly over time, which is, again, very useful. And then it can also learn the move Whirlpool, which allows Finneon to create a vortex of water that is spinning around, basically a whirlpool to hit its opponent. But perhaps the most interesting part of Finneon's moveset is that it's not limited only to water type attacks. Despite being a fish, Finneon can learn a lot of moves associated with the air. For example, it can use Gust to create a powerful blast of wind. It can even learn the move Tailwind, which is a flying type move, which increases the speed of itself and of its allies. And then it can even learn the move Bounce, which is also a flying type move, and Finneon can leap high into the air before crashing down on its opponent. So I suppose the winged fish Pokemon lives up to its name, it makes sense. It sort of swims like it's flying, it has fins that look like wings, and it can even use the wind or these flying type moves to its advantage. It's a rather unusual combination for such a small fish, but it is still just a water type Pokemon despite all these flying capabilities. It is not a flying type Pokemon. It is not water and flying. It is just water. As for its abilities, is raining. Then it can also have Storm Drain, which is a really nifty move, which what will do is it will absorb water type attacks towards it, and then Finneon's special attack will be boosted. And finally, its hidden ability is Water Veil, which what this does is basically it makes it so Finneon cannot be burnt. Nice and easy, and also kind of nice considering it's a fish and you definitely don't want to be burnt, especially not if you're under the water. But yeah, so none of these abilities, as you can see, are particularly complicated or anything like crazy, but they give us a nice idea of how versatile Finneon can be. It's fast in the rain, it can take water attacks and use them to its advantage, and it has a protection against, being burnt. So, not bad for a Pokemon that is, considered to just be a beautiful Pokemon and then nothing much to it. But, every Pokemon is wonderful in their own way and every Pokemon has something going for it. Now, I think we've talked about Finneon enough. And after Finneon has actually gained enough experience, it will evolve into a different Pokemon, right? Do you know what the evolution is called? Go. You got it? Well, if you said lumineon, you were right. And do you know what type lumineon is? If you said that it is still just a water type Pokemon, you're correct. But do you know what it is now known as? It is no longer the wing fish Pokemon. Do you know what it's known as? It's a little bit tricky, but it's actually in its name. It's quite literally in its name. Think about it, lumineon. Well, it is now known as the neon Pokemon. Lumineon, the neon Pokemon. There we go. Now, Lumineon's body has developed into a much deeper blue with darker scales covering most of its body. A lot of its body is now bigger, though. It measures at 1.2 meters tall, or just under 4 feet, and weighs 24 kilos, or just under 53 pounds. It still has these large, again, large for its size, eyes that we saw on Finneon. Although Lumineon's eyes have a more distinctive appearance with these dark eyelids sort of surrounding them. But the most obvious change, of course, has to be its fins, right? Those little butterfly fins that we saw on Finneon have become massive on Lumineon. They extend out from Lumineon's body like a big pair of, butterfly wings. And just like Finneon's markings, they're also capable of absorbing and producing, light. In fact, Lumineon's glowing fins are arguably, even more impressive. When a school of Lumineon are, illuminating the darkness of the deep ocean, they're said to resemble stars shining in the night sky. How pretty is that? You get a sky full of stars, but underwater. That is insane. I love it. There's another little detail we can notice though. When we compare male and female Lumineon, just like in the small evolution in Finneon, there's a subtle difference, which is that female Lumineon have larger, lower fins than males, giving their bodies a slightly different silhouette. Just another fact that, a nice way to differentiate the genders of Lumineon, basically. Now, Lumineon also continues being the same type of Pokemon that Finneon is. They still travel in schools, and they usually are found closer to the surface of the water, where they can absorb more sunlight. But Lumineon itself tends to make its home much deeper beneath the surface, further down. And this is where things get really interesting, because even though Lumineon is clearly a fish, right? Lumineon does not always need to swim. And you'll be like, what? You mean it can jump and fly like Finneon? Yes, it can do that, but Lumineon, as you can see, has the seafloor. So instead of swimming through open water, Lumineon can literally settle down to the bottom of the sea and essentially walk along the ocean floor with its fins. I know it may look a little bit strange, but there are actually some advantages of doing this as well. For example, number one, staying close to the seafloor can make Lumineon a lot more difficult for predators to spot, and it also helps Lumineon look for prey that may live closer to the bottom of the ocean. And while it's looking for prey, as you can imagine, it will flash the patterns on its large fins and use their light to lure Pokemon towards it, which is a very effective strategy when you're hunting Pokemon in the darkness, because you illuminate a light and they'll be like, oh, where is this light? Let me go towards it, and then you're trapped, or Lumineon can go and get you basically. However, there's also the unfortunate possibility that something else might see the glow and look at Lumineon and be like, oh, Lumineon looks like a bit of a nice meal. So a bit of both. So its beautiful fins can obviously be both an advantage and also a potential risk. Lumineon also has to be a little bit careful because in its deep sea environment when it lives, it has to compete with other predators, right? For example, Lumineon competes a lot with Lantern for the same sources of food, right? So their Luminions and Lanterns have to essentially not fight with each other, but they compete for the same types of food, right? And Luminion itself is quite an effective hunter. It's been known to prey upon Pokemon such as Staryu and Starmie, which also helps the fact that it's always walking on the ground on the ocean ground, I guess, if you want to call it that, because it makes it, that's where a lot of Staryu and Starmie are. They're in the ground of the ocean, I guess, and so by walking there, it's able to find Staryu and Starmie, which it likes to prey on, essentially. Some research actually even claims that Starmies are Luminion's favorite food. We'll just throw that there. So, when Lumineon is moving along the seabed, it may very well just be looking for a meal that it likes, or one of its favorite meals, if you want to put it like that. And so that kind of makes more sense of like, okay, why is it walking around the seafloor or the ocean floor when it can just swim? There you go. So, when we look at Lumineon as a whole, we can see how much of its lifestyle is a little bit different from Finneon. Finneon spends a lot of its time, or most of its time, swimming through the water, traveling in schools, and making use of, the sunlight by standing close to the surface of the water. However, Lumineon will still maintain some of that behavior, but it has become much more adapted to its life in the deep ocean. Its enormous fins will absorb light and then provide a lot of light in this darkness. It's able to move in the ground, which Finneon cannot do. And while Finneon might look a little bit more like a butterfly swimming through the water, Lumineon is a little bit more mysterious in my opinion. It still looks like a butterfly, but it's like moving through the darkness of the deep sea and glowing and a little bit different, but still very beautiful. Now, let's look at some of its moves, right? Because Lumineon does get access to some stronger water type moves after evolving. For example, it can learn Surf, which, it can create a powerful wave of water. It can learn Waterfall to crash into its opponent. It can learn Aqua Tail, so Lumineon can cover its tail in water and strike its opponent with it. But just like with Finneon, Lumineon isn't only limited to water type moves. It learns a variety of other moves. So for example, it can learn Air Slash, like the flying type moves, just like Finneon, right? So with Air Slash, it will attack its opponent Psybeam. And you will not even believe this, but it even learns the ice type move, Blizzard. Can you believe that it can learn Blizzard? If you know, not many Pokemon learn Blizzard. Barely any Pokemon learn Blizzard. And if you've been to class, you will know that actually so many Pokemon can learn Blizzard. I don't know why, but so many Pokemon can learn Blizzard. Did you know that Lickitung and Dunsparce can learn Blizzard? How does it even work? Like, does he like lick the Blizzard? Lickitung, what? Anyways, Lumineon can also learn it. Let's move on. So, Luminion's move pool might not be the largest or the most unusual one we've seen in class. It's definitely not. But it does give Luminion as a water type Pokemon a good amount of variety. Right, so a lot of things they can do to adapt to its environment. So when we look at its abilities, Luminion actually keeps the exact same 3 abilities as Finneon. So Swift Swim to increase its speed in the rain, Storm Drain to absorb water type attacks and boost its special attack, and Water Veil, which will protect it from being burnt. So nothing new there, but Luminion definitely has a lot of different moves to work with, and you know its abilities are always nice and helpful. And let me check. Yeah, I believe that will be everything for Luminion for today. And with that being said, I think our class of Finneon and Luminion will come to an end here. I think that both Finneon and Lumineon are wonderful examples in the Pokemon world of how beauty and survival often go hand in hand, and how beauty in nature always has a purpose. So, thank you so much for joining me in today's lesson. I hope you enjoyed learning about Finneon and Luminion, and you can appreciate these Pokemon just a little bit more. And I look forward to seeing you again in our next class. Thank you so much. Bye bye. Take good care of yourself. Hey, thank you so much for making it until the end of the video. This video actually won a poll to decide, who the next Pokemon that we look at should be. It was actually a super close poll, to the point where when I was preparing this video, I was like, okay, please, nobody overtake Finneon right now, because, I might have to, I might finish preparing this one and someone else has won, and it's like, okay, you didn't choose the winner, but, yeah, hopefully Finneon is still winning. But yeah, if the Pokemon you voted for didn't win, don't worry, I will get to it eventually. It's just that obviously these videos take a while to script and all that stuff. So yeah, thank you for your patience. If you want to support my content a little bit more, you can check out my Ko-fi account so I can keep making more videos. But yeah, if all you can do is watch the video, I really appreciate that already. Honestly, just you guys just watching and commenting helps me out a lot. It really helps me out and motivates me to do more videos, and hopefully it makes it so that more people who like Pokemon and who enjoy ASMR will find my videos and hopefully watch them too, and hopefully like them too, and join our little community. So again, thank you so much for being here. Honestly, thank you so much. Finally, I want to say that I recently finished playing Pokemon Black on the channel, and it left me in a mood to want to play more Pokemon games, to be honest. So I thought that maybe we could do a live stream where we play some Pokemon games. It would probably not be ASMR, but I wanted to be this sort of like calm and safe space where we can just, play some Pokemon, maybe have a chat, and all that stuff. I would have to see like the logistics behind that and all that stuff. But yeah, like, do I make a new channel since it's not ASMR content? Where do I stream and all that stuff? Anyways, enough rambling. If you have any suggestions or ideas, please, those are super appreciated. I read, obviously, I read every single comment, so please let me know your thoughts. Anyway, with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on next time. Bye bye, take care of yourself.